Hello, everybody. Welcome to this evening. We're just going to wait a couple more minutes for see if we have a few more people coming to join us. Then we'll get the show started.
Hi, Alon. Waiting for the show to get started. How's your evening been?
Great, very good. We're just getting all the IT set up, and it's nice to see people join. And thanks for joining, Rohit.
And I'm really energized for this session after the end of tax year madness I've had today. So yeah, it should be
Yes,
good fun.
good. Yeah, we get busy before the holidays, and I guess you get busy before the tax year. Great. So yeah, it's with real pleasure to introduce Rohela, who is a friend of mine that we've got to know over the last sort of half year, and he is the founder of Finsbridge Wealth Planning. And Rohit has a very interesting way of looking at dentistry, an important part of dentistry and an important part of our career, which is actually how to plan for what you need in life. And Rohit was going to do a much better job of introducing himself and then go into talk about wealth planning. And then, as we said, I'll then take on board from there and take things further and look at how to build a valuable practice as the two sort of go hand in hand for most dentists. And then at the end, we'll invite everybody to have some questions. We'll have Q&A. We'll invite everyone to, you'll feel free to turn your cameras on so we can see who we're talking to. There are a few familiar names, but really nice to meet some people here that I haven't known yet. So over to you, Rohit.
Thank you, Alon. I must admit that it's been really good fun getting to know you and work with you. So let's make today's session power-packed, and hopefully people will take away some gems of wisdom, which will make investing, 30 to 45 minutes of their time worthwhile. So I hate to talk too much about me. So what I'll do is just share my screen and tell you a couple of things which may be useful to know about what I do. Okay, it's all about the outcomes. So I've been a financial planner for dentists, which basically means I understand your world. I've worked with dentists exclusively for the last 5 years, but I've also been lucky enough to have family members, cousins, friends as dentists. And my mission, my passion is about helping my clients live life by design. Now, living life by design, I really want to talk about that for a couple of minutes, because we all go through this journey of life in a way that could be described as living life by chance. Certainly for dentists, as Alon, you will confess, and many others in the room, it's about getting from the day to day, the week to week, the CQC inspections, the patients, their treatment planning. So taking the time out to look at the big picture. What is my purpose in life? What is my definition of happiness? These kind of questions almost take a back seat. And that's where most of us are, right? Especially dentists. And what my job is to try and do is to move them away from that and to come back to living life by design, which means reaching their long-term goals, being the architect of their life's journey. So we call this the Finsbridge Lifetime Masterplan, where we look at your life from now to, say, the age of 100. Now, of course, no one knows whether they're going to live to 100, but it's about aiming to get there and aiming to get there in a way that you can attain financial freedom, which means breaking the link between having to work, so working 30, 40, 50 hours a week, and then getting an income to live your life just for a Saturday and Sunday. So at some stage, early enough, when we are still fit and healthy, the idea is to move away from that. So how does this master plan of your financial future actually work? So dentists broadly fall into two camps. One is dentists who are going to be associates all their life. They're quite happy working for somebody else and then leaving the headache of running the business to that person. And then there is the entrepreneurs, okay, which want to have their own practice. That is the kind of people we are talking about today, by and large. So for them, it's about painting a vision of what life looks like at the other end. So often the journey starts with, as Alon, you're going to talk about, identifying the right type of practice to buy. How do you scale it up and get it to the level you want it to reach? And how do you exit? Okay. Now, and the answer to that doesn't only lie in the clinical way of thinking about it. It also lies in your life goals. So once we have actually identified the predictable milestones, so let's say you want to retire at age 55 and you want to travel around the world, you want to play golf, you want to buy some nice cars. There may be various things you want to do, give back to the community. So all of that comes with a cost, and we put that cost on that life's map, and that brings us to the magic number. But that's not the only thing, Alon, that we need to think about. We need to think about other things which come along. We don't like them, but they do come along. Care fees, medical treatment, adjustments for later life. So all of those things are considered when we are creating this master plan of our financial future. So some of the questions which help probe our personality, our subconscious mind about what our definition of happiness is. How do we get joy in life? How are we going to get there? Will it benefit if we invest in seeking the right professional advice? What tools and strategy we are going to use? Now, here I want to just pause for a minute, Alon, and I want to talk about the power of coaching that I've found working very powerfully in my own life, right? So when we are looking at decisions that we need to make, we apply our own subjectivity to it because it's our emotions, it's our way of thinking, it's what we have. So we look at the world with our lens, right? You have a lens, I have a lens. But when we are talking to somebody independent, who hasn't lived our life, that person can then provide a unique perspective to us. And often that provides insights to us, which we can't really achieve on our own. And that for me is the real power of seeking help or seeking advice elsewhere. Okay. So all of that exercise leads us to the magic number. Okay. The magic number is all about finding out how much money we need by the time we decide to attain financial freedom. And then for the rest of our life, we don't ever need to work again. The need to work is an option. Yeah. Now, I know some of you dentists love what you do and you want to continue to have some sort of involvement in it, which is fine. The key word is optional. Okay. So if you want to go on a round the world holiday for 3 months, you can do it. Think about other things that you need, like children's education, new cars, holidays, so many different things that can come in the picture. Again, for some people, it's not a case of hanging up their boots at one point in time and walking away. It might be, okay, by a certain age, let's say 50, I want to go 3 days a week or 2 days a week, or I want to get out of practice ownership, but I still want to keep working in dentistry. So it's balancing work and play. And then once you know what your magic number is, it's about understanding what your existing investments, what your existing pensions, what the practice sale value is going to get you. And then working, if there's a gap, like in most cases there will be, is working with professional consultants to help you bridge the gap. So where I come in is the financial planning, where Alon, you come in is the clinical side, okay? Operational side of dentistry. How do you build your practice up to that level, okay? And last but not the least, I am also known as the tax terminator. And there's a story I really want to share behind this, Alon. I hope you wouldn't mind me sharing that story for a minute. Right. So I take you back to about 12 years when I was just starting my career in this country. And in one of our training sessions, I came across a quote which was delivered by one of the chancellors of the Exchequer. And that said something like, people who do not do tax planning love the taxman more than they love themselves and their children. And that stuck in my mind. That really did. Because if you imagine you're working, like most dentists are high rate taxpayers or more, right? So you're working 4 to 5 months of the year to pay the taxman and not yourself. If you think about it in those terms, it just hits home, doesn't it? And that was quite powerful. So it really stuck with me. And I have since spent a lot of my professional time, expertise, and I spend a lot of the advice time is on understanding the impact of tax on your income, on your magic number, whether it's income tax you pay on your regular income, whether it's capital gains tax you pay on the sale value of the practice, or tax you pay on, other assets that you've got. And eventually, in this country, they don't let you go even when you die, right? They want 40% of that pie when you pass it on to your children or your nieces, nephews, grandchildren. And that is all of that, right, is avoidable by building a holistic view of wealth preservation, of bloodline protection, transferring wealth through the generations. And that's the reason why I am today described as, in a lighter way, the tax terminator. I know you like that. You're laughing. I love that smile, Alon. Right. So that's it from me. The case study will come a bit later. But I don't know if at this stage, Alon, we have any questions or you'd like to share any thoughts?
No, that's great. I don't know if they have any question. Anyone has questions from the audience?
You can
Fine.
unmute yourself and ask away or type in the questions in the chat.
Yeah, so feel free if you got. I mean, anytime you can just interrupt and just ask a question, or as Rohit said, ask. You can put a question in the chat. So what I'm going to do is just share my screen, and if I can press the right buttons and start on the other element of it, which is great. Yeah, as some of you know, my name's Alon Preiskel. I'm the founder of Collaborate Dental Group, and also a prosthodontist, or mostly a prosthodontist, second generation here in Wimpole Street. For many years, some of you know, I was teaching prosthodontics at Guy's. But I guess what started me on this journey was, and I'm also quite involved internationally, and involved with the International College of Prosthodontics, past president of the American Prosthodontic Society, and member of the Academy of Prost. But what sort of brought me here in this part of the journey was 8-9 years ago now, I decided I hadn't done enough studying, felt like studying something totally different, and went to London Business School to do an executive MBA. And really from that came the kernel of what's evolved into Collaborate Dental Group. Because what I really understood was that what we miss in dentistry is a lot of the knowledge that big businesses have by being independent and very small, and actually having very deep education in dentistry, but not necessarily a broad education around business. It makes it very difficult for many of us to grow our businesses, and really that's what it's all about, is providing that network of support, of knowledge, and all the resources you need to grow your business long term. So when it comes to creating wealth, as Rohit sort of mentioned, on the one hand, you've got understanding what that magic number is, understanding what it is you need to try and build up during your working life. And then what I'm going to talk about is actually how do we as dentists do it? Because you want to grow your assets. So essentially, there are two elements. You need to grow your assets and then capture the value of them. And as dentists, we primarily your excess profit, you could either invest outside of dentistry, talk to a friendly financial advisor. You can grow your own dental practice, or growing it organically, or you could grow your assets by acquiring other dental practices. Now, this little squiggle is actually a really important. It's actually a really important diagram, and it was actually something was showed to me in a class in business school. And it's, as it says, it's the life cycle of a small business. So with dental practice, we look on the y-axis, we can look at practice performance, and on the x-axis, we have time. And as you can see, when we start a new practice or buy a practice, at the beginning, we're kind of overwhelmed, trying to create profit, trying to generate growth. And then as you get going, suddenly you're growing and growing and growing very rapidly, because now business is running smoothly, you've got the right people in place, you found that magic formula that suddenly the people just come through the door. And when they come through the door, they say yes to whatever you say. And you've got that confidence, and you found you found your mojo to make things work. And everyone does that in dentistry and in life, but everyone does that slightly differently. And by getting that right combination, you just you're off on fire. But for many of us, that period of rapid growth also actually coincides with rapid requirements for your cash. Very often house, school fees, family holidays. And so even though you're actually very, very successful and growing very fast, you're almost, you're eating as much as you can, you're swallowing as much as you can chew. You're really using up all your cash. And one of the things is where you get to this peak is that what tends to happen is that you run out of resources to grow. And normally for most small businesses, that resource is time and knowledge. Because what happens is you're just maxed out. You're just running around with your hair on fire. If you still have any, if you're lucky enough to have any hair, you're running around looking after the practice, treating all the patients, doing this, doing that, and just working at 100 miles an hour. And so two things happen is one, you've been very successful at what you're doing, but actually you don't know how to do anything else. And so you just max out. And after a while, what very often happens is that that growth starts to plateau. And the really interesting thing is, as that growth starts to plateau and even drop, very often you don't even notice that it's dropping. And the reason is, Rohit, can you give me the answer? I'll put you on the spot. I can't imagine.
Because you're so consumed by the micro that you can't see the big picture. And even if you can, you don't know the formula to it's a strategy, right? Which can take you to the next level almost.
So you can't grow any further because you've been doing the same thing, and that thing is limited, and you don't know as you say, you don't know how to build it. But actually, what happens is very often is that even though your practice performance has gone down, actually your take-home cash has gone up, or the cash left over at the end of the day, because at this point you probably paid off some of the loans that you took to buy the practice. You paid off some of your mortgage for your home. Maybe your kids have finished school, and so suddenly you're actually dropping and you don't realize it. And so for me, and what we want to, for what we're trying to do is actually, the question is, how do you get from this kind of cycle to actually grow your business, grow your assets long term? So if anyone knows who this chap is, this guy is Yogi Berra. and he was a ace world superstar of baseball in the late 50s, so in the 50s, and apparently his namesake was actually named after him. So Yogi Berra was named after Yogi Berra. And the reason why I've got these random pictures here is that Yogi Berra has one of my favorite quotes, which is, if you don't know where you're going, you might wind up somewhere else. And yeah, I use this very often because it's so simple, but so true. And one of the big problems that we have is because we don't really understand how to look at our business, we don't actually know where we're going in terms of, you know, how do we set what that goal is? What is success? What does success look like? It's not just having some more implant patients or some more Invisalign patients. What does it really mean in terms of growing your business to being a valuable, sustainable business? And as I mentioned, actually getting there, the key resource isn't with money, because actually dentists can have access to finance pretty easily. The key resource is knowledge. And it's firstly understanding where we're going, and then how do we get there? How do we put together all the building blocks to take your business from where it is to where you want to get to? So when we look at growing an individual business, essentially we can do it by increasing the income. You can do that by increasing capacity. So, you know, you might have 2 surgeries open 4 days a week. If you can get that to 4 surgeries opened 6 days a week, then obviously you're going to have you've got a bigger business, more income and more profit. Likewise, if you're only providing some services, you can increase the number of services, which is again going to increase the amount of income that you generate. Perhaps you might not be able to actually expand any further. So, you know, you might want to actually physically expand. You know, you build that, you know, turn that flat in the top floor into another 2 surgeries, open up your surgery practice for longer. And again, that's all about servicing more patients and growing the business in many ways, just growing the top line. Another element is increasing profit. So, you know, you might be going along very well. Maybe actually everything's at capacity, but you don't really fancy turning that flat, or there isn't a flat to increase, and you don't really fancy moving into bigger locations. So, you know, very often, actually just looking at what treatments you do. One of the big things that most of us as dentists don't really do is actually understand what drives profit in the practice. You know, we just pretty much look at what's left in the bank, sometimes at the end of the year, but if you're a bit better at the end of the month, and looking at the sort of management accounts and understand where the income is coming from and why the main expenses are, but actually understanding which treatments actually generate profit, which treatments don't, because when you analyze it, you're often quite surprised that many of our treatments are really loss leaders. And so the important thing is to make sure that firstly you have fewer treatments that make loss, but actually also to make sure that your loss leaders are really loss leaders and not loss makers. And you can do that by changing the pricing, and of course, actually just being more efficient, reducing costs will increase your profit. If you're trying to grow your dental asset, the other way you can do that is by buying another practice or buying your first practice. And as I said, in many ways, dentists are lucky, if that's the right word, that we can go to a bank and the bank will often lend us a lot of money. It's actually when you go into sort of the commercial world and look at how how businesses have to borrow, how they borrow money, actually dentists can borrow huge amounts of money. And that's great because a high debt leverage means that you can get very high returns in the equity. When you put leverage, the other word of calling it gearing. You don't want to have a corporate finance lecture today, but I see Rohit nodding, so that means I must have said something right. But essentially, you take a pot of cash and a bit like investing in property, put a lot of leverage on it. The return on that equity is going to be much higher.
You basically make a lot more money from the money the bank gives you.
Exactly. Actually, one of the secondary benefits, particularly people that sort of have a special, who are specialists or have a special interest in sort of implants or orthodontics or endodontics. One of the things that adds on top of that is that you can then focus your clinical dentistry on just doing the high value things. So if you're in one practice, you might be doing a whole range of checkups, a few fillings, a few rehabs, and a few implants. But actually, if you've got 3 practices, not only have you got the benefit of the leverage of the acquiring these practices and the profit of all 3 practices, but also you can go and you spend your days doing just the implants and just doing the high value treatment in those practices, and that's actually quite a significant impact for people that that want to have a small sort of multi-practice ownership. But what do you need to do that? Of course, you need some equity. The bank won't give you everything. Normally, they'll lend you maybe 80 or 90% of it. That still leaves that 10-20%, which isn't insignificant. Although actually very often the bank will, if you've got equity in your house, they'll let you do that, and that's actually a very potentially a very effective way of using the equity that's in your house to reinvest that. But of course, running multiple practices is a very different ball game to running one practice, because when you're in your practice, firstly, you probably built it up over a long time and got to know everyone very, very well. And but effectively, you're running it when you're there all the time. So managing a practice when you're not there is a totally different skill. And so with that comes another level of business risk. And of course, then you're looking at potentially more or less sort of associate-led practices and all the quirks or dealing with dentists suddenly not as your colleagues but as your employees can be very, very different environments. And again, with that high gearing and that high return on equity comes a high element of risk. And of course, you're acquiring a new business and with all the risks and headaches that come with it. So how do we capture the value of your dental asset? Because you spent a whole lot of time, a lot of sweat, and probably some tears building up a real pot, and now you want to come. Now you're beginning to dream of your exit and what you're going to do with it. So how do you capture the value of the asset? So quite simply, the equation is that the market value, i.e. what you can sell your practice for, is what the financial value divided by the risk. And what I mean is, if you look at the financial value, that will be, say, a multiple of EBITDA. I'm sure some of you have heard of that, multiple of profit. That's how many dental practices are valued. But what that multiple will be and what the terms around it will all be dependent on the risk that's associated to the buyer. Because it's almost inherent. Whatever someone's going to pay for your asset is going to be a factor of those two things. And of course, in a dental practice, particularly a small dental practice, the biggest risk is you. So when you're building your dental asset, you've got 2 parallel streams. You've got the one side, which is building the financial value, whether you do that by growing your practice or acquiring practice. You want to build the financial value and you at the same time you want to put into place de-risk systems to de-risk the practice of you leaving, and that way you can capture the best value of your practice. So if we think about lifestyle and exit planning, there are lots of types of exits. In fact, there are two different parts of the exit process. Firstly, you can sell your business, and the other element is actually stop hanging your drills up. The two, quite often, they can be very near each other. But to say, as Rohit said, actually, a lot of us actually do enjoy dentistry, and not only that, actually, in many ways, it's a privilege to be able to continue to work. When I look at my father and some of his colleagues, and to see that actually having the opportunity of basically continuing to work, continuing to be valuable, continuing to have something where you interact with your colleagues, stimulate your mind with your patients, long term is actually a real, it's actually a real benefit of being a dentist, as opposed to when you see people in the sort of corporate world who sort of work up their career and then basically get fat out and say, it's game over, and they don't have an option apart from trying to create something totally new. But actually, depending on how quickly you want to exit from your business and how quickly you want to exit from dentistry, that's going to have a big effect on who the sort of practice, who the buyer is likely to be. So again, in dentistry, we've got broadly speaking, three types of acquirers. You might sell to an individual dentist. You can sell to a multi-practice owner. So again, a dentist or a dentist who own multiple practices. We could sell to corporate. And they all have different pros and cons. Broadly speaking, I'd say the individual dentists will want to buy a practice outright, buy it quite quickly, and take over the clinical dentistry very quickly. And so, broadly speaking, that will suit someone that wants to exit both the ownership and clinical dentistry very quickly. A corporate, on the other hand, tends to be different because they want the owner to stay around for 3 to 5 years, and basically to guarantee that sort of revenue. And so that might suit someone that wants to really be sure about maybe capturing the value of their business earlier on in their retirement, in their exit planning, but someone that wants to quite happy to stick around and do dentistry for a fair bit longer. And multi-practices sort of fit somewhere in between. So if you think about de-risking your practice according to the potential buyer, you can see that the risk to an individual dentist is going to look very different to a corporate. So, for example, for a corporate, they're probably not too worried about the management side of things because quite simply they're going to bring in their own management, and in many ways, they're likely to want to change things. Whereas an individual dentist, they are going to be worried. They don't want to just, hand over the cash and open the door and see it's your total mess. They're going to be really concerned about that. But then on the other side, in order to pay that huge mortgage that they've just taken on to buy the practice, they need to do a lot of high-value dentistry. So they wouldn't want to see a whole bunch of other associates doing, and the principal only working there 2 days a week. Whereas actually a corporate might actually see that as quite beneficial because that, again, de-risks them. Their biggest risk is a principal leaving. And so having the principal doing a small amount of dentistry is actually a good thing for them. So when we look at preparing for sale, creating a robust business at the same as growing the business, that's a real key. And creating that robustness and the resilience in the business It's about understanding having the right people on board, the sort of management team and the dentist, whether you're going to sell to individual or to corporate, and having the right systems and processes in place so that there's a good business management, the patients are well looked after, clinical care is environment for good clinical care is fair, and the right people are making the right decisions within the business. It's all of those key components are necessary, and depending on your direction of sale, it's going to be slightly different. And so the important thing is to start thinking about it early, so that firstly you know where you want to get to, and then secondly you've got time to build all the building blocks to make sure that you actually get there.
Thank you, Yogi Bear.
So with that, I'd say thanks everyone for listening, and we will open the floor to questions. So if we have any questions on the floor, that would be great. And also feel free to switch on your camera so we can say hello. But in the here's someone. Hi, Ronan.
Hey, Alon. Very quick question. What's the biggest errors or issues you see when people are kind of going to this stage? When they get to you, you've seen, hang on, you should have done A, B, or C beforehand, or what kind of prerequisites should people be doing before they get to this stage?
To the stage of selling?
Yes.
Do you want to answer that, or shall I answer that first, Rohit?
You go for it.
Okay, so I mean, the simplest thing is not having it starting it 5 years earlier, or at least 5 years earlier, and that's quite simply the biggest thing is actually to really understand what that process looks like, and I think to understand what you really want out of it, because ultimately you're going to have a compromise between selling to the people that you want to sell to and getting the value, the maximum price, most likely, or the maximum security. So some people, they'll actually want to take a lower price, but actually know that it's going to happen in a set time frame. So I think, as I said, many times, understanding what you want is the most important thing. I mean, here in the Wimpole Street area in central London, we have a lot of real quirk to a lot of the practices. So I've seen people just get into total mess because they left it really late. They thought, they were very naive and brought in associates. They said they were going to buy them out, but they were very naive about it. And then, 2-3 years later, they said, thanks, no thanks, but I'm quite happy being an associate. And they've then gone through the process 3 or 4 times, and suddenly they're 10 years into their exit strategy and still haven't sold, and that's actually very sad. And so planning it in advance is, I'd say, definitely the most important thing, and bringing the right people to advise you.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, I can add to that from my financial planning hat. What I come across is a lot of dentists aiming for arbitrary numbers, that I want to sell my practice for 1 million, 2 million, 3 million, without really understanding why. If you start with the why question, then your number is going to be more accurate and it's going to be more relevant to you. So what we do here is something called the financial planning exercise. And if I can just quickly share this diagram, this is exactly what a lifetime cash flow master plan looks like. So in this case, the retirement goal is £50,000 a year. The retirement is aimed for the age of 55. We are expecting the person to live to the age of 100. So they know, looking at their life right now, that they're going to have a shortfall, which is the red here. And this helps answer the question, how much further do they need to build the value of their practice and the value of their other investments to get to their magic number? So doing that first before then thinking about the clinical side of how are you going to expand your practice value. Because let's face it, you might expend a lot of effort to make it a lot bigger and more valuable, spend more time, effort, but you may never need it in the first place. So that why and the magic number is my starting point.
That's great. Thanks a lot, Rohit. Rohit, you said you were the tax terminator. That's, I think, something that every dentist wants, needs on their side. Could you tell me a bit about how you can help sort of shield tax, both on, you know, on the exit planning and maybe also even, you know, as an associate?
Yeah, absolutely. So let's start with the universal bugbear, income tax. So if you are structured as a sole trader or a partnership, then you get taxed on all your net profit. So one part of that is working with your accountant to claim as many legitimate expenses you can to reduce your profit number. Where I come in is beyond that. So you can use things like pension contributions. So if you are a 40% taxpayer, then pension contributions will effectively get you a 50% uplift. So you put in 10,000 in a pension, the government is going to give you 5,000 back. There are venture capital trusts, which are investment in exciting early stage companies, but they also carry a 30% income tax refund. So strategies like that can help you minimize your income tax. In most cases, I reduce it by 50 to 70%. Then we talk about capital gains tax. So capital gains tax could be if you are selling your assets like a buy-to-let property or shares, or it could also apply when you're selling your practice because that is an asset. So up to £1 million of practice value is normally taxed at a lower rate of 10%, called entrepreneur's relief. And the remainder is taxed at 20%. But we have investments that can help you reclaim that. You can also structure the sale in a particular way to minimize that tax. And you can work to extract as much value from your limited company. So if your structure is a limited company, the company can make pension contributions on your behalf too. The company can do corporate investments. So let's say, Alon, you have advised the dentist to look at having another set of practices in 5 years' time. So if they've got a lump sum sat there now, we can invest in the name of their company, corporate investment, grow that money free of tax up to the point where you're going to invest it again, offshore bonds. So there are lots of strategies which can help prevent your income tax and capital gains tax liability. But really, last but not the least, the tax which I hate the most personally, right, is inheritance tax. So imagine you've paid income tax, capital gains tax all your life, and now you've got your hard-earned money, and when you die, you pass it to your children, you're taxed at 40% on anything over £1 million for a married couple, and £500,000 for a single person or unmarried partners. That is very unfair. And it is one of the easiest things to avoid if you do some careful planning. You can use things like trusts. You can have investments which are IHT exempt. So for us, for dentists who are a little bit older, who are selling their practices or have done so, or their assets cross £1 million, you should definitely start thinking about the intergenerational aspect. So hopefully that gives a little bit of context.
That's great. That's very good. That sounds excellent. As I said, yes, reducing your tax bill it sounds like a very good investment.
Yeah, and ultimately, Alon, what I always say is don't let the tax tail wag the planning dog. Reducing tax means more money in your pocket. You work less to pay the taxman, you work more to actually make your future better and brighter. But it's about knowing the grand plan and where everything fits. And that's where I think having this introductory discovery session with an expert can really help.
Absolutely. Great. Do we have any other questions from the audience? Good. So I think in that case, we'll wrap things up. I just want to say thank you so much, Rohit. Really great having you on here. And thank you all for joining us. I hope it's been interesting. If you want, we're recording, as you heard, we're recording this this evening. So we can send you a link to it. And of course, if you've got any questions, reach out to myself or Rohit, and we'll be very happy to get in touch. So that's all, and have a very good evening, and I hope to see you at the next webinar.
Thank you, Alon. Last word from me, learning to build your